Hey guys, back with another playthrough, and this time we're playing through Descent: Journeys in the Dark 2nd Edition with the Forgotten Souls expansion. This is a fully cooperative expansion, which means there is no Overlord player required, and it's fully cooperative. These are the components of the expansion. It comes with 10 peril cards, which are these little cards. They're new. 12 exploration cards, 10 activation cards for the monsters, 1 title sheet, 1 track sheet, double-sided, and a reference sheet. Notice that there are no rules here because you have to go to the website here to download the rules, which I've done. And yeah, with that, let's get set up. To set up, take the exploration deck and take out these 4 cards. The onset and the cards with number 1, 2, and 3. Just put the onset aside for now. And then the rest of the cards, give it a good shuffle. And then deal 3 piles. Now you notice that one of the piles will only get 2 cards, and the first 2 piles will have 3. Next, take the cards with the numbers, and then put number 1 in the first pile, number 2 in the second, and number 3 in the third. And then we want to shuffle these. Finally, stack the decks together, 2 on top of 3, 1 on top of 2, and that would be our exploration deck. The onset would be the first card that we set up. Set aside the track sheet, and then place a fatigue token on the loot track at the lowest position. Place an orange hero token at the appropriate spot on the doom track. So if you start with 3 player, you would put it here. And then finally put the purple hero token on the top of the fate track. You want to shuffle these activation cards and then set them aside, and then shuffle these peril cards and set them aside. You'll also need to shuffle the treasure deck and set them aside, and the shop deck and set it aside. Let's set up the first encounter, which is the onset. And to do that, you refer to the encounter guide, so the online rules that you can download. And in the encounter guide, for each encounter card, there is a specific entry that tells you what you need to do, what you need to set up for that tile. So for the onset, it says that we need tile 19B, and and we need to set up the monsters according to this setup. So 19B, we're gonna connect these tiles here, again according to encounter guide. And then there is a treasure token here. So Master Bargus, regular Bargus, Master Zombie, and a regular zombie. Our heroes are going to start in one of these 6 boxes. The exit to this chamber here is here, so the door is here. And that would be the setup for the onset. How you read this setup guide is, if it's red, it obviously means it's the master monster. And then here there are numbers. So if you're playing a 2-player game, you would only place this monster. If you're playing, if you're playing a 3-player game, you would also place this monster. And same thing here. If you're playing 2, you place a zombie. 3, you place 1 more. If you're playing 4 players, you would also place this 3rd zombie there. I'm playing with 3 heroes, and the first one is Jane Fairwood. Her hero ability is that when she suffers any amount of damage from an attack, she may choose to suffer that as fatigue instead, and she cannot suffer fatigue in excess of her stamina. Her stamina is 5. Her heroic feat: as an action, she may move double her speed and perform an attack. The attack may be performed before, after, or during this movement. And here are her stats. 5 movement, 8 life, 5 fatigue, and 1 grade defense die. And some of the stats up here as well. For her class, I've chosen the Wildlander, and she starts with a short bow, which is a ranged weapon, and it gives her +2 range or +1 damage upon a surge, which is the lightning symbol. So if she rolls one of these symbols, she can pick which one. And then she starts with Nimble, her skill, which is each time a monster moves into a space adjacent to her, she may use this card to move 1 space. Then the monster may continue its activation. But she needs to spend 1 fatigue to do that. And then we also start with, for all of the heroes, with 1 experience point. So I've chosen this card, which costs 1 Each hero starts with 1 experience point, so I've chosen this card, which costs 1 for Jane. And she basically, each time she performs an attack with a bow, she gets to re-roll a power die, limit 1 per attack. The second hero is Albright. His hero ability is each hero within 3 spaces of you can gain this ability, which is upon a surge, recover 1 damage on all attack rolls. Heroic feat: as an action, roll 2 power dice. This lets him again heal some of the heroes. So he's sort of my cleric of the group here. For his class, I've chosen the Disciple, and he starts with a mace and a shield. And his abilities, I've got Prayer of Healing, which didn't cost anything, and the Bless Strike, which costs 1 experience point. Again, sort of a healing type of character. Last but not least, Grisden the Thirsty. He has the most health at 14, but he's pretty slow at 3. His ability: each time you perform a rest action, you may immediately discard 1 condition card from yourself, and his heroic feat basically allows him to perform an extra attack action. For his class, I have chose the Berserker. He starts with a Chip Great Axe, which is a melee weapon. Gives him some more damage there. He has a ability of Rage, which is, as an action, perform an attack, and that attack gains +1 damage. And finally, with his experience point, I've picked Brute as his ability, which allows him to gain 4 health. We're almost ready to start. Let's take a look at this encounter card here. You can see that we're doing the onset encounter. And the first part, the top part of this card, tells you the conditions for this encounter. And the bottom part tells you how much time you have. So in this case, we have 2 turns. And what happens if you don't complete the conditions and get rid of this encounter card by the end of the 2 turns. So this says advance Doom by 1, then discard this exploration card. So basically it's a bad thing when Doom increases or Fate decreases, because they're on opposite ends of the track. And when they meet, the game ends and you lose. So this card says advance Doom by 1, and then you get rid of this card. And when you next explore, you would draw the next encounter card. And in this room, each time a hero enters a space that is not adjacent to another hero, the hero who entered that space suffers 3 fatigue. That basically means that your heroes are encouraged to stay together to avoid that penalty. If there are no monsters on the map, discard this exploration card. So to get out of this tile here, to beat this encounter, we have to essentially eliminate all the monsters while keeping together as a group and doing it within the time limit of 2 turns. For our heroes, here's Elric. I'm going to put him here. Brisbane, I'm going to put him right in front of Elric. And Jane, I think I'll put her maybe over here. Alright, let's go. Turn 1. Here's the hero turn summary, and on a start of turn you basically refresh your cards. And if there's any start of turn abilities you would do that, but I don't think we have any right now, so you can also equip items. Well, you don't have to do that this turn, and then perform 2 actions. Move, surge, attack, and so on and so forth. So, for Elric, who will start for us, Elric is going to move 1 as his first action, and he has a movement of 4, so that's no problem. And then he is going to swing his Iron Mace and attack the Master Bargus. The Iron Mace, he rolls a blue die and a yellow die. The Master Bargus, we're looking at the bottom portion of this card here. He gets to defend with just 1 gray die. So let's go ahead and roll those. Five, 1 defense, and 2 damage and a surge. The 5 here has no significance because that's basically the range for range attack, but this is a melee attack, so ignore that. The 1 defense and the 1 shield and the 1 damage cancels out, and we're left with 2 damage and 1 surge. Okay, so the surge means I can take a look at my weapon card, which is an Iron Mace, and it says on a surge I can stun the enemy. So I'm going to do that, stun the Master Bargus, and deal 2 damage to it. 2 damage. Stun is a condition, and it says, as an action, discard this card or token. This is the only action you may perform on your turn while you have this card or token. So that's good because that means the Master Bargus basically cannot activate during the monster activation. Next up, Grisbin the Thirsty. He's going to just take a whack at this Bargus as his first action. Grisbin gets to roll a blue and a red dice for his attack, and the Bargus gets his 1 gray defense. Okay, so we have 1 defense and 5 damage. The range again we ignore, and we have a surge. So 5 damage with 1 defended, that's 4 damage. 4 damage plus a surge. Let's see what a surge does for his great axe. So the chip great axe, a surge basically just adds 1 damage. So that's 4 plus 1, 5 damage. And if we look at the monster card, the Bargus only has 4 health. That means that Bargus is eliminated. So with his great axe, chip great axe, Grisbin just goes ahead and easily kills off this Bargus. Grisbin still has 1 action left. So he is going to actually spend a fatigue to move 1 into here. So he gets 1 of these fatigue tokens on his player sheet. And then he's going to take a whack at the Master Bargus with his blue and red die. Okay, so that's 4 damage plus a surge. The surge would be used for 1 damage, so that's 5 damage with 1 defense. That would be a total of 4 damage on the Bargus. The Bargus already has 4 damage from Alvric's attack. He gets another 4, so that's a total of 6 damage, but his total health is only 6, so that means this Bargus is eliminated. When Grispin defeated this Bargus, what we forgot to do and should have done is come over to this loot track here, and what we need to do is increase loot track by the number of spaces that the monster takes up in terms of the base. So Master Bargus is 2 spaces for the base. That means we increase this loot track by 2, up to 2. Next, when we killed the Master Bargus, we first look over here at the cards section of the loot track. Because we killed the Master Bargus, we get to increase this track by 1 to the 2 cards level. And then again we get to increase this by 2 because the Master Bargus is 2 base. 2 bases large. 1, 2. So now we're at the 4th level here. And when we hit the 5th level, which is the 3-player level, it has a 3-player symbol there. That means we get to grab our loot, and the number of loot cards that we get is whatever level this fatigue token is at. So that would probably be 2 cards. Now this turn we don't get to draw anything and reset this track because we are still at 4, and so we continue with gameplay. Jane's turn. Now Jane, she cannot move towards the zombies because that would mean she's moving to a space that's not adjacent to a hero, and she would suffer 3 fatigue, which I don't want her to suffer at this point in the game. So I think what she's going to do is just make a range attack. And yeah, let's do that. Jane's going to make a ranged attack. She's attacking with her short bow, which means she rolls the blue and the yellow dice. And then the zombie gets one of these gray defense dice. Just to be clear, Jane is shooting her short bow towards the regular monster, the regular zombie here, instead of the master zombie. Let's re-roll that. I think that was the same result. First, let's look at range. In order to hit the zombie, Jane needs 1, 2, 3 range. She's 3 spaces away. Now, she did in fact roll a 3, so we're good for range. She does not miss. Her arrow goes through. And secondly, the zombie did roll 1 defense, and that's just gonna cancel out this damage here. But we do have a surge, so we have essentially 2 damage and 1 surge. Now, what does the surge do for the short bow? It gives us either 2 range or 1 damage. Because we don't need range, I'm going to spend it on the damage, which means we would deal 3 damage to the zombie. If we take a look at the zombie card, it was a wise decision probably to target the regular zombie and not the master zombie, because the regular zombie does have a health of 3, and with 3 damage we would take him out. So he is gone from the board. Over here on the loot track, zombie gives us 1, and we've essentially hit the 5 on the loot track, which means we get to draw our loot. And because this is now at the fatigue token is at 2 cards, we get to draw 2 loot and then pick 1. And we get The first card, Iron Battle Axe. The second one, we have a Magic Staff. Once we do that, everything resets back to the lowest position. So this comes down to 0. Both of these cards look quite tempting. The Iron Battle Axe gives +2 damage on a surge and automatically gives a Pierce 1, which means it ignores 1 armor. And then upon a surge, it gives another Pierce 1. Magic Staff, melee weapon, ranged weapon. Surge, deal 1 damage to another monster within 3 spaces of the target. That's neat. And then it also gives you 1 range. And both of these are great because they all roll the blue and red dice, which is the stronger attack dice. I think I'll take the Magic Staff. Yeah, I'll take the Magic Staff and give it to Jane, so she will basically just put it in her inventory here, and she can equip it on her next turn, and this card gets discarded. Actually, the card that we didn't pick goes to the bottom of the loot deck, the bottom of this deck. Second action for Jane, she's going to attack, and this time she's attacking the Master Zombie. Let's reroll that. So the zombie didn't roll any defense. We rolled 4 damage and a surge. And with the short bow, surge can add 1 more damage. So I'm going to do that. That means the zombie would suffer 5 damage. It's not dead yet because it has 6 health, but it's nearly dead. With that, that's the end of the hero phase, and we go into the Overlord phase, which starts with Overlord effects. For Overlord effects, what we do is we look at our encounter card, we look at the bottom part of it, and what happens here is we take a look at this timer here. We're currently at time 1. To represent that, we place a fatigue token onto the card, and if we on the next turn during the Overlord effect phase we place another fatigue token on this card, that means we would have failed this encounter and we would have to do this effect. Now there's only 1 on here, so we're good. Next we have the fate, and it basically says here, if there's no active exploration card, advance fate by 1 and resolve 1 peril card. So that would be a bad thing because moving the fate token down is always bad. And you have to resolve 1 of these red peril cards, and they're pretty much always bad for the heroes. But we don't have to do that for this turn because we still have the onset in play. Finally, we have monster activation. So to do that, we grab our monster activation deck, and then we draw the top card. Now, there's only 1 zombie on the board, so normally they would activate this in this order, but since there's only the zombie, we would go straight to the zombie and see what it says. For the zombie activation, each time a zombie attacks, it adds 1 surge to the result. Okay, so for this card, every single zombie would get 1 surge when they attack. And then the first action, we would go through each of these actions to see whether the zombie can do this or not. So the first one says, engage the closest hero who is not diseased. If we refer to the reference at the back of the rulebook, at the back of the Forgotten Souls rulebook, that is, you can see that it explains what engage is, and it says the monster performs a move action and moves towards a specified target. If the monster would not move when performing this action is not performed. So, the zombie would try to move to the closest hero who's not diseased. And he can do that, so he will go ahead and do that action. The zombie moves adjacent to Jane Fairwood. He has a movement of 3, so he is able to do that. Having done that, we move down again to see what he does for a second action, because monsters, they do 2 actions. So, next up we have attack an adjacent hero who is not diseased. The zombie would be able to do that because now he's next to Jane, so he would go ahead and perform this attack. For its attack, it gets to roll 1 blue and 1 yellow dice. And for Jane, she just gets a gray defense die. So let's roll these. Before we roll the attack for the zombie, Jane actually has an ability that she can activate, and it says each time a monster moves into a space adjacent to you, you may use this card to move 1 space, then the monster may continue its activation. So I will spend 1 fatigue for that. So Jane will get that on her card, and she would move 1 space. Jane's going to move 1 space this way, and then the zombie would perform the attack. We have 2 surges, 2 damage, 3 damages, and 2 defense. So first off, this would block the damage from the yellow dice. But we just surge here, and this is an additional surge and 1 damage. For surge, let's see what the zombie can do. This is a master zombie, so surge actually would mean it could either be a disease or +1 damage. Now, we do have a damage here, and actually he got 2 surges, so he can do both. So what happens here is the first surge would disease us, Jane, and the second surge would add the 1 damage. So she takes 2 damage and is diseased. This is the disease card, and it says at the start of the turn we have to test our willpower, and if you pass this card, get rid of the condition, and if you fail, suffer 1 fatigue and keep this card or token. So it basically drains our fatigue when we're diseased. I'll put this card on the player sheet of Jane Fairwood, and we'll give her 2 damage tokens. Now, Jane actually has a special ability which says when she takes damage, she can instead take it as fatigue. So I'm going to do that. Instead of taking these heart tokens, I will take 2 fatigue. She has a total of 3 fatigue now. This concludes the first turn. We've had a full hero turn and a full overlord turn, and we've done pretty well. We've gotten rid of 3 monsters. We're only 1 health shy of getting rid of this one, and we should be in okay shape to move on. I'm going to end it here, and I'll see you guys in the next turn.